Welcome to our review of the Panasonic AU-EVA1 cinema camera. In this video, we'll explore the following topics. 1. Unboxing. We will show you what the EVA1 comes with and the additional items you may need to purchase to get the camera up and running. 2. Assembly. We will show you how to assemble the camera out of the box. 3. Overview. We will go over the controls on the camera, get a feel for its layout, and check out the menu interface. 4. Test footage. We will show you our test footage showing the EVA1's capabilities, including slow motion examples, the 6 different gamma presets, a low light test, and graded vlog examples in 4K. 5. Review. We will explain the pros and cons of the camera and let you know if it's worth the investment. 1. Unboxing. The camera body is small, but has some weight. It is sturdy and appears to be well built. The EVA1 also comes with a shoulder strap, microphone holder, dual battery charger, battery, AC cable, AC adapter, LCD monitor, and manual and warranty. Here are some things you may need to purchase. This EVA1 comes with a Canon EF mount, so you will need an EF lens. You will also need a V60 class or above SDXC memory card to start shooting. You will also need camera support. We will be using a Zacuto tripod. 2. Assembly. On the bottom of the camera, you will see 2 holes for mounting to a tripod plate. We will mount the LCD monitor next by simply screwing it into the handle. Then connect its cable to the camera. This input is strictly for this Panasonic LCD monitor. The LCD monitor has a removable hood. We will also connect our Canon EF 24-70mm f2.8 zoom lens. Pop the battery in after it's been charged. We will add our memory card. Notice that there are 2 slots. And finally, mount the microphone holder. I have a spare Sony stereo mic that I will be using with 2 XLR connections. The camera also has a built-in stereo microphone right above the lens mount. By the way, the handle and hand grip are completely removable if you need the EVA1 to be compact. Good for mounting to a car, crane, or placing in tight spaces. 3. Overview. Let's check out some of the controls and take a look at the layout of the camera. The adjustable grip, great for using the camera handheld, has a record button, menu button, a multi-dial, and an assignable user button. By default, user 8 is set to expand for focusing. On the back of the camera, you will notice 2 XLR audio inputs for connecting microphones, a headphones connection for listening to audio, a SDI out for an external monitor or recorder, a timecode connection for syncing multiple cameras together, DC power in to use with the supplied AC adapter, a HDMI out for a monitor or recorder, USB-in and a service terminal. The USB-in is for using the EVA ROP app. The remote operation panel allows you to control many of your camera settings using a device like a tablet or phone. The app is free in the App Store, but requires a wireless module that connects to the USB port of the camera, sold separately. 2 slots for memory cards, and a slot select button for switching between cards. On the side of the camera, you'll see the record button, the ND filter button, which has 4 options: clear, ND 0.6, ND 1.2, and ND 1.8. The iris dial, up closes the iris, down opens it. push it in to switch between auto and manual iris. The auto white balance button for white balancing with a white card. If you open this little door, you'll find the audio input controls for 2 channels. Each channel has a manual auto switch and an input level dial. Additional audio controls are available within the camera's menu. 3 custom user buttons. I set mine to zebra, color bars for setting up external monitors, and focus squares, which I've grown to love. The bigger the square, the more in focus an object is. Assigning user buttons is done in the camera's menu. This user button turns on the electronic image stabilizer, handy for smoothing out handheld shots. The EVA1 can also use your lens's optical image stabilizer if it has it. This user button displays and hides the waveform monitor, used for properly exposing an image. The lock switch can disable all of the buttons except for the power button when engaged. The white balance user ISO switch is used in conjunction with the multi-dial. When the switch is set to white balance, you can multi-dial through many white balance presets. Handy when you don't have time to white balance with a white card. When it's set to ISO, you can use the multi-dial to switch through all of the different ISO dB gain settings, faster than changing the ISO setting in the menu. The user toggle, the middle option, is set to raise and lower headphone volume. The menu button accesses the camera's menu that shows up on the LCD monitor. The LCD monitor is a touchscreen, but I prefer to change the menu settings by first pressing the menu button, then using the multi-dial to scroll through the menu. The multi-dial can also be pushed to make a menu selection. The exit button helps you navigate back through the menu. When you push the home button, a single screen shows many different camera settings all at once, such as frames per second, color settings, shutter, exposure index ISO setting, audio meters, white balance, resolution, recording codec, time remaining on SD card, time code, and more. This is a quick way to make sure your camera is set up properly before rolling. The thumbnail button is a quick way to play back clips that you have recorded. And finally, the power switch. Next, let's check out some of the menu items. If we press the menu button, the menu pops up on the LCD screen. The first highlighted item is System Settings. If I push the multi-dial, we see System Mode. If I push in the multi-dial again, I can set the frame rate frequency of the camera. We are set to 2398. We can go up to 5994. To go back to the previous screen, I just press the exit button. I can also change the sensor mode. S35 5.7K is the best, but if you want to shoot slow motion over 60 frames per second, you will need to choose one of the other options. Main pixel is for setting the camera's resolution. It can go from 720p all the way up to DCI 4K. Main codec is for setting the recording codec. If we go back, you will see color settings. This is where you choose the gamma you will be recording. One great thing about the EVA1 is that it can record vlog, but you can monitor Rec 709 on the SDI out, HDMI out, or LCD out in any combination. This allows your client to be able to look at an image with contrast and color, even though you are shooting flat log to capture a large dynamic range. The camera also has 5 scene settings that we will go over later. If we exit back, we can get to Audio Settings. This is where you can change your audio channel settings, like making channel 1 camera mic or input 1 XLR-N. Audio Output Monitor Out is where you decide how you are going to monitor your audio with headphones. Just channel 1, just channel 2, or both, either stereo or mixed. If we exit out to the main menu, we can go into Camera Settings. Here's where we can adjust frames per second when recording fast or slow motion. Shutter is for adjusting the shutter speed. I like to leave that on 180 degrees most of the time. EI is where we can adjust the ISO. The EVA1 has dual native ISO, so you can set the camera to a base of either 800 or 2500 ISO. After choosing a base ISO, you can dial an ISO setting as low as 200 or as high as 25,600. We'll talk about that more later. If we go back, we can also see white for white balance options. Important tip: if you want to do a manual white balance with the AWB button on the front of the camera, set the value to AWB memory, or the AWB button on the front of the camera will not work. If we go back, Record Settings is where you format the memory cards. Just go into Cards, Media, and select Format Media. Part 4. Test Footage. Let's check out the 6 gamma presets available in the camera and describe each one. The first choice is V-Log. This is a gamma curve that can achieve wide latitude or exposure range. A grading process after recording is required. I've included a link to the Panasonic V-Log to Rec. 709 LUT in the description below this video. Next is Scene 1. Panasonic describes this as the EVA look gamma curve with 14 stop latitude equivalent to V-Log. This setting is focused on contrast. Next is Scene 2. It's similar to Scene 1, but it's a lot less contrasty. Panasonic describes it as focused on soft texture. Next is Scene 3. Panasonic describes it as the broadcast look gamma curve with 600% dynamic range equivalent to the generally used video camera. Scene 4 is another video gamma curve. Finally, we have Scene 5. This is the hybrid log gamma curve with wide dynamic range created for HDR TVs. The color range equivalent to BT 2020. A HDR TV is required to see HLG at its best. I did play it back on my LG 4K HDR TV and it recognized it as HDR video. Low light test. Now let's check out how the camera does in low light. As we mentioned earlier, this camera features dual native ISOs of 800 and 2500. The benefit of this is that for day shooting or shooting where you are working with a lot of light, you can use the native ISO 800 for a very clean image. In low light situations, you can set the camera to the native ISO of 2500. At a base setting of ISO 2500, you can get a less noisy image as you increase your ISO settings. Much cleaner than starting out at a base of 800 and going up from there. For this low light test, we changed our native ISO to 2500, then dialed the ISO down to 1000, then slowly brought it up to the camera's highest ISO of 25,600. As you can see, the image is quite noisy at 25,600, but I would imagine that it would be pretty rare that you would ever need to shoot at such a high ISO. The camera does great in low light, and we were pleased with the results. It's very sensitive without being too noisy. Next, let's look at how the camera handles slow motion. The highest frame rate it can record is 240 frames per second, but you must be in 2K or Full HD resolution, and the sensor is cropped to 4/3 from the center of the image. Now, let's look at a shot we recorded at 120 frames per second. At this frame rate, you must be in 2K or Full HD resolution, and a 2.8K pixel mixing read is performed from all of the pixels of the image sensor. Next, let's check out some 60 frames per second slow motion examples. At this frame rate, the camera uses all of the pixels of the image sensor, and we can shoot at the maximum resolution of the camera, 4K DCI. The image is very impressive. Here's some more footage that we shot while testing the camera. It was shot in DCI 4K at 23.98 frames per second in V-Log. In post, I added the 709 LUT from Panasonic. I then color corrected the footage to my liking. Here's where you can see the camera's 5.7K Super 35 sensor really shine. A lot of this footage was shot in harsh sunlight, but with 14 stops of dynamic range, you still get a ton of detail in the highlights and shadows. Part 5. Review. We found the EVA1 to be an excellent camera overall. Its 5.7K image sensor outputs a very detailed image in 4K. We also like that it can record up to 240 frames per second slow motion in 2K and up to 60 frames per second in 4K on internal SD cards. Its ability to shoot Vlog and V-Gamut make it versatile in both standard and high dynamic range output. It has 10-bit internal recording and 14 stops of dynamic range. It is great at capturing lots of detail in the highlights and shadows, and dual native ISO allows cleaner capture in low light situations. Our only complaint is the LCD screen. It's highly reflective and not very bright, even with its hood, making it difficult to use outdoors on a sunny day. We greatly benefited from purchasing a Zacuto Z-FInder loupe. Despite the drawbacks of the LCD monitor, for well under $10,000, this camera delivers, and we believe it's worth the investment if you are in the market for a new camera. Please like and subscribe if you found this review helpful. Thanks for watching.